All right, well, welcome everyone to Appraising High Performance Homes and Why They Can Sell for More. Before we get this session started, as we always do, our member spotlight today is a big congratulations to our longtime members, Architectural Resource, who won the 2023 Lead for Homes Outstanding Single Family Award. The For the Journey project is a Lead for Homes Gold, GHI Zero Energy Certified, and all-electric home using a building science approach and moisture management for an indoor treadmill-like pool, which includes radiant floors. Both of these technologies addressing their clients' Raynaud's syndrome. This home also introduced a prefabricated frost-protected shallow foundation from Scandinavia for the first time ever used in Michigan. You can learn more about this project and take a virtual behind-the-scenes tour by going to it on our website. And, you know, this is what GHI members do, and so can you. Make sure to sign up and become a member and support our work today. And speaking of support, we have to thank all of our sponsors who support these sessions and help them going, especially one of our top tier sponsors, Rheem. Rheem features heat pump water heaters. The future of water heating is finally here. Rheem offers a hybrid water heater with backup electric resistance, 240 volts to ensure hot water all the time, as well as a sort of 120 volt plug-and-play system that can quickly replace traditional methane gas water heaters. These work by pulling heated air through a filter and it's absorbed through R410A refrigerant using a compressor to heat coils wrapped around the tank. You can control these systems, their heating levels, they can sense leaks, track energy use over time, and set up a time of use program to help keep homes off of carbon peaks and energy intense peaks. The Inflation Reduction Act benefit up to $2,000 tax credit for these Rheem heat pump water heaters and up to $600 for electrical system improvements if it's needed. Now, if you don't like heat pump water heaters or want all that technology, that's fine. Rheem also makes all electric traditional tanks that have time of use programming built right in. So again, you and your clients can stay off peak, reduce carbon as well. Rheem heatpumpwaterheaters.com. Check them out. And before we get started, just a reminder, this session is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute is the mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be the session moderator. I'm Brett Little. I'm the education manager here. And as always, this course is approved for multiple continuing education units. It's approved for all 5 pillars in our certified Green Home professional designation and LU under AIA. So, you know, before we get into it, you know, one thing that's worth noting again is that we talk a lot about building science and technology, of course, at our sessions, but it's worth noting that no matter what we do with building homes greener, healthier, or net zero all electric, the reality is if we can't communicate and ensure that that value is understood, it's going to be difficult to get anywhere. If any of you have been following us, you know that we have been doing more and more focused realty and home valuations events. We did one not too long ago where we talked about an appraisal study that was done where we particularly honed in on a portion of it within Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so now I'm excited to have Casey Murphy back on the show again. Maybe I think it's her second or third time. Casey's also been in person speaking at some of our events in the old days to talk about the study in general, and then ask some other co-speakers here who he's going to introduce about the general challenges and opportunities for appraisals of high performance homes. So we're excited to keep this conversation going. I hope you'll all join into it, whether you're live here now or on demand later. And Casey, welcome. Could you introduce yourself and then introduce our other guests too? So.
Yep, I certainly can. So welcome, everybody. I am Casey Murphy with Pro Certification. I will say that, like Brett, what you introduced at the beginning, I love heat pump water heaters. I love homes that are built to and certified to standards like LEED. It's partly my job to understand and communicate the value. Pearl's motto is we make value visible. And partly it is based on our understanding of high performing homes and making sure that home buyers, agents, and most important for this conversation, appraisers understand what those features and benefits are. And so we can effectively kind of communicate that value. Just as a little bit of background about myself, I have been in the construction industry for about 30 years, in the high performing home industry for about 20, where I was a BPI building analyst and HERS rater, supported the EPA programs for about a decade and have been with Pearl for about 6 or 7 years. So I'm not an appraiser. I'm not an expert. I have just enough knowledge to be dangerous. That's why I'm super excited to have Woody and Betsy. They are the experts. I consider them, quite honestly, the foremost experts among a handful of a few others across the country on understanding high-performing homes and being able to leverage that knowledge in the practice of the appraisal methodology. So what we're really going to do is really have a conversation with them. I think of this being a conversation that can be started on this webinar, but needs to continue post this webinar among these multiple different industry actors. So I'll let Betsy and Woody introduce themselves in just a little bit. I wanted to actually have the audience introduce themselves as well. But first, I wanted to kind of emphasize, as was part of the advertisement for this webinar, the learning objectives are to understand the appraisal process for high-performing homes, the opportunities and the challenges, discuss studies that have been done and what they mean for high-performing homes, and also know where to get more information on the appraisal process and how to improve that process. I did want to set the stage for about 10 minutes, so that part's going to be a bit PowerPoint driven, and then really it's a facilitated conversation. I'm going to be asking questions of Woody and Betsy. They're going to provide their insights based on their experience, and audience members, I'd love for you all to contribute to that conversation as well. And then we'll conclude by kind of putting it all together towards the end of the webinar. But first and foremost, I wanted to go ahead and ask the audience. I mean, I assume it's a wide variety of people in this audience. And so the first question that I wanted to ask, and I think, Brett, this is where you'll be, there's the poll. So if you are, what's your familiarity with the appraisal process? So are you an expert? You know how they're hired, you understand their business model, you understand the scope of their services, their methodology, and the different tools that they have in their toolkit. The second would be knowledgeable. I know they're hired for the most part by lenders for the buyers, or the lender offering a refinance. Their client is the bank, and they're often selected by appraisal management companies. And I know where appraisers kind of fit into the kind of the timeline and the process when a home is being refinanced or sold. Is your knowledge passing? That they're responsible for valuing things. Maybe you've seen them on the Antique Roadshow, and you generally know their job, or you're an eager learner, so we should assume you know nothing. And Brett, should we have the answers now, or should I ask the second polling question? And we'll give 5 seconds for people to respond if you haven't already.
Yeah, let's get those answers now. Sorry, everyone, ignore question 2 and 3 that got tagged on. Those are nothing. But let's give everyone about 5, 4, 3, 2, and we'll close it. So there we go.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a mix, kind of a bell curve, where kind of in the middle, passing or knowledgeable. So the second polling question is going to be in the same vein, but instead of asking you about the appraisal process, you're familiar with high-performing homes. So you can start answering the questions now. I'm killing time reading this. Are you an expert in terms of you design them, build them, assess them, improve them, list and market them, and or help your buyers find them? So you are familiar speaking British thermal units, pascals, inches water column, R value, all of that, your native language, and you have industry certifications and a postgraduate degree from the School of Hard Knocks. Knowledgeable would be someone who you're comfortable engaging with your clients on the benefits of high-performing homes. You understand house system concepts and the importance of these ideas to deliver comfort, indoor air quality, and efficient energy and water usage. A third would be kind of passing. I kind of know about green homes and the value, but I'm not really comfortable engaging with my clients about it. And then the fourth would be kind of an eager learner. I don't even know what building science is. And so we'll go ahead and close the poll in 5, 4, 3.
I closed
2,
it a
1.
little early, so we got most of everyone in.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and that's kind of consistent with what I had imagined, that we would have more of the expert audience with the building science. So that's great. We're not going to get into the weeds, but this is just more for us to kind of factor in some of our answers who the audience is. I did want to spend a couple minutes just talking about who Pearl is and why we are working with appraisers and how we work in the marketplace. So Pearl was founded to transform the market for high-performing homes. We are a public benefits corporation. We're pursuing our B Corp certification status right now. The two founders of Pearl came from the construction and the energy efficiency industry. Cynthia Adams ran a nonprofit in Charlottesville during the era days. Robin LeBaron used to work in affordable housing and then moved into the high-performing industry back around 2008, 2009, developing tools and resources to really transform the market and scale energy efficiency. And it was really when they met in that where they got the idea of Pearl, of how we can try to really scale energy efficiency and create market transformation. Part of that vision is the importance of home value to drive true mass demand and supply for making homes better, whether or not it's a new construction or existing home. So utility rebate programs, federal rebate programs like IRA, they all play an important role. But to really create long-term market transformation, we need kind of this virtuous cycle where high-performing homes are understood. Homes can perform better. Often we can represent that, we're all suffering from the tyranny of low expectations when it comes to homes, and we really should demand more for our homes. Once that knowledge is out there, homeowners will invest more and more in either purchasing a high-performing home from a builder and or improving their existing home. But it's important that they get a return on that investment in terms of added home value. People spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on home improvements when it comes to aesthetics. And we need that demand generation occurring for high-performing home features as well. And so we need this value chain to work and to function in order to truly create a market transformational effect in the residential housing sector. So Pearl was established to generate that type of market transformation. So we exist at kind of the intersection of multiple different industries and what is really a complex ecosystem with a lot of existing standards, certifications, and labels. So a couple things I do like to emphasize about what Pearl does is that we have been built from the ground up to apply to both new and existing homes. So we're not just a snapshot of a home at a particular point in time, but a kind of a living certification to guide homeowners on their journey based upon their budget, their needs, and their opportunities. And that we want to complement existing green programs and scores. Like the lead home, Brett, that you had at the beginning. I love that home. I love the design. I want to make sure the value of that home is understood a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and that homeowner the current one, or future homeowners are maintaining and improving that home over time as well. And so oftentimes we've been described as kind of a Carfax for the home, where if a home is certified or scored, we want to make sure to capture that and make that valuable and visible in the marketplace. So one of the core things that we've always done is fill out the appraisal addendum. So we have about 150,000 appraisal addendums that we have filled out to date. So every single time we certify a home, it includes this. Page 1 of the appraisal addendum is this a home, an Energy Star home, Indoor Air Plus home? Does it have a HERS score or a home energy score, things of that sort? And we'll also fill out, to the extent that we have certifiable data about it, the granular data about the R value, the HVAC, the solar, et cetera. And so we've gone to market with a number of different national partners, manufacturers, distributors, because we are trying to make sure that again, that entire value chain is working. So we go to market with a contractor division where we're engaging with high quality contractors. We have accreditation standards so that we understand that they are a high quality shop, and we'll work with them. We work with homeowners day in and day out, giving them guidance and education and resources as they're trying to make their home higher performing. New construction, we're helping builders take advantage of 45L and move up the certification value chain to help them differentiate their properties. The real estate division, so when people are listing or selling their home, we help highlight those high performing features. And we work with product manufacturers as well. And then we work with policymakers to kind of bring the market to meet the policy objectives when it comes to high performing homes. So this is a preamble to really what we have encountered when it comes to home value. We have had successes. So we've had a couple of studies that indicate that homes, when they're properly marketed, sell for more. That can be and will be a part of the conversation a little bit later. What I want to emphasize right now is some of the challenges that we continue to face. So one example is, we would get a homeowner contact us and say, hey, listen, I installed solar. Now my agent is telling me I need to uninstall the solar because it's going to lower my home's value. And so we've had to educate the homeowner, the solar contractor, and the appraiser, because the agent was probably getting some of this information from the appraiser, as to why this, in fact, isn't the case. We get others who have, told us about what their appraiser has told them. This is an example of a listing agent who is trying to communicate the value of high performing home. And this is the advice that was given to that agent from an appraiser, where they said the property situated at this location would not benefit from having green work done. When valuing green properties, there are many contributing factors. That is in fact true. Some of the other stuff is maybe a little more challenging. Many homeowners do not buy the solar panels; they lease them. This means that since they are not allowed, they are not owned, no value can be given to this feature. Paired sales analysis is impossible. There are also other green factors that can't be valued, such as spray foam insulation, LED lighting, high-performing windows, et cetera. They are an over and improvement for this neighborhood and would not increase the value for the home. Lastly, there's a lack of data to accurately explain these green features, and so no adjustments can be made. All of these factors are reasons why value for green features in most areas are not taken in the appraisal report. There's elements of truth in that, and there are other elements that are not necessarily best in class, and so we'll get into that with Betsy and Woody. And the last example I'll have is we work with builders who build zero energy ready homes. And as part of that process, of course, their buyers have to get an appraisal done. So this particular builder has a zero energy ready labeled home. It had a HERS index of -3. We asked for the appraisal, and this is what the appraisal said. It said additional features about this home: average quality construction with typical finish and amenities, wood flooring throughout, granite countertops in the kitchen, no additional contributory features noted. And under energy efficiency items, typical system. So this is a home with a -3 HERS index built to zero energy ready standards. And this is when all the data is fresh and present. Imagine this home being resold 2, 3, 4 years from now. and the challenges that the appraiser would have for this home as well. So these are some of the challenges that the high performing home industry has in order to communicate its value as a contributory feature that appraisers can take into consideration. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Understand, get some insights from appraisers. And as I said, I consider Woody and Betsy just two outstanding appraisers. And so I wanted to kind of start with you, Woody, if you wanted to give a background, how you got into the business, also into kind of the green appraisal industry as well.
I appreciate it, Casey. And I see one of my former colleagues and coworkers, Dustin, is here. He's an appraiser. Nice to see you, Dustin. I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. That's where I practice. We have a firm here that specializes in kind of doing, different kind of valuation work. We don't do normal stuff. While we do normal stuff, it's not our specialty. Our specialty is working on mansions, luxury estates. And, high performing homes and green is definitely something that falls into a specialization category for us. Charlottesville, we're fortunate, has been a very active market when it comes to high performing homes. A lot of the builders after the Great Recession started adding in a lot of energy efficiency packages, stuff as a package into their builds. And they were hurting for appraisers here to pick up the education and the experience necessary to do this kind of work. And I just happened to be right place, right time. And I'd like to say the reason I got into this is because I like to hug trees, but I don't. It really came down to it. I saw it as a business opportunity. And long story short, for the appraisers on here, I'm the only person in my market that does this work, and we go all over the state. Matter of fact, we've converted what we do into a national consulting business to help other appraisers figure out how to do this work. So we've got a lot of background in it. I've probably appraised well over 1,000 homes at this point that have some type of high performing certification and or solar. And we've done a lot of consults for pre-construction and a lot of stuff for retrofitting as well. So, and I also instructed the Appraisal Institute, and that's us in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Woody. And Betsy, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Casey. I'm so glad to be on here. I am actually in Virginia Beach, and my company covers the Hampton Roads area. So we have 7 cities here in southeastern Virginia. Then I also cover Currituck and Dare counties. So I am in Outer Banks a lot. We do a lot of the beach properties. So although solar is getting to be very popular here, it's the valuations that we're having issues with. So I've been able to do some solar appraisals, but unlike Woody, who it's very popular up in his area, we haven't had a lot of purchases or refis with solar yet. So still in the process of educating the market and how we can get the data in the market so that they can be valued effectively. So I've been appraising since starting my own business in 2006. And so I've been in that same market for that long, and all residential. And it's just been I love the green, the high efficiency homes, and it's just trying to get everyone on board with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Betsy. And I'll tell you, I always enjoy, talking with you, talking with Woody. I learn something new every single time. So I'm looking forward to learning some more during this webinar. So there are 5 myths that I wanted to kind of quickly go over before we delve into some of the deeper discussion. But myth number 1 is appraisers determine a home's value. So maybe Betsy, if you wanted to kind of give your thoughts on this first, and we can go to Woody.
Yeah, that's a common phrase that we hear often. Actually, no, appraisers don't determine the value. The market determines the value. And it's up to us to analyze the data that we have in the market to be able to develop an opinion of value. So, Woody?
Yeah, I mean, Betsy's right on point with that. I mean, the other thing, when I'm talking with agents and things, they'll say things to me like, hey, you gave this adjustment. And it's like, no, we don't give adjustments. A good appraiser actually has a whole set of tools that we use for analytics, and we go in and we figure out how to extract out contributory value for different things. I mean, real low-hanging fruit that we could talk about is square footage. Why would an appraiser, adjust at $50 a square foot or $100 a square foot? There's all kinds of analytical tools that we have at our disposal that we use for that. We don't just magically pull it out of the air. I think some appraisers may do that, but for the most part, we're using analytics to come up with that information, and it's all derived from market data. So the market tells the story, gives us a story that we convert into a story that we put into a report, basically.
Awesome, thanks, Woody. And so myth number 2 that I've heard is agents and sellers can't talk to appraisers. So maybe, Woody, you want to take this one first in terms of the appropriate role for an agent and seller to talk to appraisers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I spend a lot of time on my soapbox talking to agents and other stakeholders in our profession about this very topic, because there is this misinformation out there that that agents and the sellers or the buyers can't talk to us directly. They absolutely can. Anybody that's commissioned in the loan process or the selling of the transaction of the home, which would be loan officers or agents, they can all talk to us unless they have a company policy. A lot of lenders out there do have policies in place where commissioned folks are not allowed to talk to us. However, there's no law against it. And I actually reach out to agents and talk to them all the time, because agents interact with the consumer directly. We don't interact with the consumer directly unless it's a refinance or one of the buyer, either the buyer or the seller at the inspection when we go through. I'll certainly ask them questions, but I need to know about market, what's motivating them to do what they're doing. And that's the only way we can get that information, is directly from the agents or again, from the buyer or the seller, if we just so happen to come upon them. So they absolutely can talk to us. Now, we can't, anybody who's commissioned in it can't come to us and try to collude with us. That's what, when the lenders prevent the loan officers from talking to us, that's the whole idea of their policy for that, is to say, hey, we don't want there to be any type of even perspective improprietyism going on between the appraiser and the person who's originating the loan. So, but I'm all about data, and so wherever I can get data from, I'm going to get data from, and that does include the agents.
Great, Betsy, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, and obviously I completely agree with Woody. Value, we can't talk about value, but the agents are our biggest, they have the most information when we're trying to either look at the subject property itself or the comparable sales that we're going to be using, or even active listings. They're telling us what they're seeing in the market. And so that is extremely important information for us to value, the data.
Great. So myth number 3, which we touched on a little bit earlier, no comps mean no value. So we'll probably get into more of the weeds 10, 15 minutes from now, but any kind of initial highlights of this? And Betsy, if you wanted to go first on this one.
Yeah, that's an easy out. So we can, again, we have tools, we have analytics that we can use to determine if there's value there or not. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a real lazy answer from a lot of appraisers. Unfortunately, what I'll leave you with until we get into the weeds later, as Casey said, is there's 3 possibilities with anything on a home. It either subtracts value, it either has 0 value, and 0 is a value. So if you say there's no value as an appraiser, you better be able to back that up with your data, or it adds value. And those are the only 3 options that we have. So, but we'll talk about it a little bit more.
Great. So myth number 4, solar has no value if it has a loan. So Woody, if you want to take this one first.
Oh gosh, this is going to make my hair turn white. Yeah, this is definitely a fallacy. So a lot of solar companies out there do use what's called a UC, or they will put the borrower or the homeowner in touch with a lender to finance their system, and they do a UCC1 filing, which is a uniform commercial. Gosh, my brain just stopped. But it's a type of loan that basically uses the solar panels as collateral for the loan. So if the loan goes into default, they can actually come back and remove the solar panels, although that hardly ever happens. But if there is a UCC filing for the loan, then we can't value it as part of the realty until that's paid off. Or if it's a loan where it's going to be a condition of closing the loan, where they're going to pay off that loan, we can do it subject to that. I will also mention that this is a common fallacy among a lot of appraisers. I see it all the time in social media posts where they go, well, there's a loan on it. My counter to that with them usually is that, hey, if you go spend $25,000 on a credit card to remodel your kitchen, so you're saying that because you used a credit card, that remodel doesn't count towards your contributing to any value. And the answer to that is it absolutely will add to it. It doesn't matter that you've got a loan on it, it just matters what type of loan that you have on it. And of course, Casey's already mentioned leases and power purchase agreements are something that if they're in place, then they have no real estate value whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. And anything you wanted to add, Betsy?
Yeah, no, I do the same thing. I actually just use a pool for an example, since it's, high dollar item, and we always give value to, or we typically give value to a pool in our markets. A lot of them have loans on them, so.
Sure.
Yep. Great. So those are some of the common myths. So I wanted to spend a deeper dive into what's called the appraiser's tool set. I think both of you alluded to that. So can you provide an overview of what you mean by an appraiser's tool set? And, Woody, I guess if you wanted to go first on this one, and then Betsy, you can join in to talk about that tool set.
So I'll put my nerd hat on here for a second, or rather my instructor's hat. So we have two types of analytical tools that we can use. And this is great Jeopardy knowledge for everybody if it ever comes up on Jeopardy. We have qualitative and quantitative methodology that we can use. Quantitative is where we can actually derive numbers. We typically are going to use one of 8 different types of adjustment support, and that can be stuff like regression analysis, it can be trend analysis, it can be depreciated cost, it can be paired sales, group paired sales. There's a few others too that are not coming to mind at the moment. We can do extraction and allocation methodologies where we can actually pull things out of certain types of sales for that. So, if an appraiser is making an adjustment in a report, they should be using qualitative or quantitative methodology, or one of those 8 methods under quantitative. Qualitative is just going to be things like, this is the benchmark, and this is either superior or inferior to whatever the benchmark is for that particular item in the market. Sometimes there's a numerical adjustment assigned to it. Sensitivity analysis is often used with that, if anyone's familiar with that. But that's basically what we can use for whatever we're doing, and any good appraiser is going to be familiar with all of that.
Great. And Betsy, did you want to kind of build on that?
He covered most of them, but there are other tools out there, especially when it comes to the solar. We have the different calculators. Pearl has a solar calculator that we can use to determine the value of the solar, give us the depreciated cost. So there's or just kind of cash flow on it, I should say. So there are tools out there. You just got to know where to find them and how to use them.
Yeah. Well, kind of on that note, let's dig in a little bit more, because you mentioned like just kind of cash flow, and I know about the comparable sales method versus income approach versus cost approach. Can you talk a little bit about those different types of approaches and how the appraiser uses his or her tool set within those approaches?
Betsy, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start with that. So those in the industry know that, the GSEs, so Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, HUD, they all require the sales comparison approach, and that's what they have the most weight on. So, but we as appraisers have to look at all 3 and, determine whether we're going to use all 3 and whether they're going to produce credible values. So we always start with a sales comparison approach, but then the cost approach or the income approach can also help support those. And so that's where, when it comes to these high performing features, we can use an income approach to help support our sales comparison, because you have that cost savings in the background to use. So.
Yeah, and the discounted cash flow analysis is a secondary methodology that we'll use. And basically the premise for that is that, hey, this solar system creates income to the property. So the cost savings that it creates, what you're not paying in utility cost is income. And that income can then be, we can take the life of the system, which is usually 20, 25 years, depending on the components. And what we'll do is we'll take how much this is going to produce over the period of that lifespan, or whatever's left of the lifespan. If it's an already existing system, then we start from the year that we're in, not the year that it was installed. But we look at what's the solar resource there, how much solar could possibly be produced. And then we also look at the escalation rates that are usually used for the utility. Like every utility company, they are going to escalate their rates on a almost regular basis, the way they do it. And here in Virginia with Dominion Power, you can almost set your watch by when they're going to increase our rate. But long story short, we look at all that, and then also the depreciation of how the system, because over time the system starts to produce less energy. And we just take all of that, we forecast it out to a future value to the end of the warranty, and then we discount it back to a current value. And that value can be a secondary support. In the Charlottesville market, we oftentimes see a very close collinearity between the two, where we're able to use sales comparison methodology and the discounted cash flow analysis that we'll use for a secondary methodology actually come back usually pretty close to one another. Not true in all markets, but we've been fortunate here that the two things are aligning. So it's a very reliable barometer for us here in Virginia.
Great. So what I've heard you say is that the market determines value. You need data from the market. You need a lot of data, right? The more data, the better for you to use all the available tools in your tool set. So, I'm wondering if you can tell me an example of kind of a typical challenge you have when it comes to, getting access to that data. Maybe Betsy, you have a couple anecdotes in terms of like, what's a typical, you want to do the right thing. You want to be, best in class providing your opinion of value. What challenges do you face trying to do that?
Yeah, and we've actually touched on some of this too, is the data. We need the data, especially from the market, to be able to support any other tools that we're using. So we need to have the data in the listings. We need to make sure that it's being marketed, and we can be able to pull that from the market to say that here's the data that we had. The other one is having the data on the systems that we're actually valuing. So data is always the key. So it's just being able to have access to that. And in my market, I find houses all the time that are, listings that I don't even know it has solar until I actually start looking at the pictures and I happen to see solar on the roof. So that is a huge challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, tracking down the data, Casey had also mentioned the white paper that we did for my firm did for Pearl. Betsy was one of the peer reviewers on that. And what we found out in that is that oftentimes where the rubber meets the road is where the brokers and agents are involved. We don't know if a comp is green or not green. I mean, if it's not marketed as such. So it's really, really important that information make it into the listings, and not just in the listing, but make it conspicuous and at the front of the listing. When we did that white paper, we discovered that sometimes comps were underselling because they weren't marketing them correctly. And so if a consumer's not aware that those features are there, they're not going to pay for them. This is with everybody having a shortage of inventory right now. No one is really concentrating on this as a specialty for the most part. But what I'll say for my crystal ball here is that as the market normalizes back to where we have inventory and it gets much more competitive on the agent side, this is a specialization that most agents should be picking up, because it can make the difference between, in our study, we came up with the average number being somewhere around 5% of a premium for homes that were, in this case, were that had Pearl certifications on their property. So it's very important, I think, for that to be used. So that can be a appraiser. The other is, on the solar panels, is a lot of times getting the information from the solar companies for the inputs and outputs that we need for that discounted cash flow analysis I was talking about can almost require an act of Congress because most solar companies won't talk to me about their customer's system without permission from the customer, and we'll go to them, try to get it, and then the follow up on the service isn't necessarily great in all situations. There are some solar companies out there that are wonderful to work with, but there are some that are just like, hey, we've done the install and we're done with it. We're not interested in answering your questions, and that's an unfortunate look for the solar industry if that's how the company's performing. So anyway, sorry, I'll get on my soapbox, Casey.
Well, and one thing I wanted to tease out too is that you mention without data, it makes your job harder. But the absence of data in terms of the marketability of a home is actually a data point in and of itself. It's the marketing. It's the market telling you this isn't valuable enough for me to include about this home, right? And so it's actually, it's not just a null data set. It's actually a data point that can hurt the home's valuation. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it is a data point. There's no denying that.
So can you give me an example of a good appraisal process? Like if everything was clicking on all cylinders, what does that look like for you as an appraiser?
Betsy, I'll let you go.
Yeah. So, and this again happened to me recently is I had an agent come to me that was doing a pre-listing appraisal. And he was struggling because it was a home larger than most in the neighborhood, and it had a solar system. So, but this is like the perfect case scenario that you could have, is because he was able to get the solar contract, and it had all the data that we needed to be able to value. So I put all the information into the solar calculator, which helped me there. And then there were enough sales in this neighborhood and then an adjacent neighborhood from the same builder that had enough solar sales that were recent. And so I was able to use the calculator to come up with that value there and then have the market support it. So it was the perfect scenario. It was amazing. So
I'm going to give Pearl a plug here. I'm really impressed with what they've done. They've done a private market solution for one of the hardest things that we deal with for these types of homes as an appraiser. Communication is really where they really excel. So if there's a Pearl certification on the home and it's handed to me in the beginning of the process, I know what I'm walking into. I've got my property productivity analysis is almost done for my green stuff for that property as soon as I get that. I mean, I've got my AI form that's filled out. I've got all the information, the pertinent information that we need to do the valuation. And it's a real effective tool. And in the same way, hers does a good job with it. Lead's excellent. We just don't see a lot of lead on the residential side because leads are rather expensive and it's a very comprehensive process and it gets into the thousands of dollars where Pearl cert. I mean, when I got the Pearl cert on my home, I think it was like $350 or $400 or something like that. It wasn't much, but considering, that I have an asset that's, worth several $100,000. So yeah, I mean, communication is the hard part. And, whenever I'm dealing with a well-informed consumer or the agent involved with it, and a lot of our agents here, they have the green designation with NARI, and they have to be, because it is something that comes up with the consumers in our market all the time. Hey, I want to buy a HERS score of 40 or less with solar panels, or we're going to put solar panels on it because we want a net zero home. And, they have EV cars, the whole deal. I mean, they really buy into the philosophy of the lifestyle of being green. And so, and we have a lot of consumers like that here. So because of that, the agents have stepped up to the plate here and they really are servicing those clients and servicing them well. So, the more information I've got when I come into it. Now, another big failure that we run into is loan application processes where loan officers are taking loan app and they're not talking about the collateral with the borrower whatsoever. They're not required to legally. There's no regulatory requirement other than to get some basic demographic information. And if a successful loan officer in a space like this is going to say, hey, tell me about your home. Do you have solar panels? Does it have a high performance certification? And at that point in time, when they order the appraisal, they know that they need to find an appraiser that does this type of work. Because a lot of lenders use appraisal management companies, which is a third-party system or a set of companies that act as the procurement for the appraisal. The lenders aren't actually hiring the appraisers. They're actually using this third party, which is called, again, an appraisal management company, or AMC. And they oftentimes are not looking for qualified appraisers. They're just looking for the cheapest and the fastest. And, the people who specialize in this kind of work, like myself and Betsy and some others, we're neither of those. We're doing thorough work. And, it is going to be a little more expensive. It does take a little bit more time because there's more analysis that has to go on with it. So, but I hope that answered your question, Casey.
Yeah. Yep,
Casey, can I just piggyback onto that? So
sure.
Back to the example that I was giving is, so I was able to produce the solar calculator report with the cash flow. And then also I filled out the AI green addendum. So gave those two reports to him that he can now include in his listing in the documents, so that everyone can see this and see the value that was produced by the solar features that are on the house. So that's a huge point for the agents, is that they can use these reports to be able to support the extra value that they're giving for their listings.
Yeah, and they're often attached in our MLS. And I have a membership in 9 MLSs now. And all of them allow documents to be attached, and usually with a high performance home, if there's a Pearl report or a HERS score report or whatever, they'll attach that in.
Great. So we have a couple questions I want to get to, and then I know we're running up on the time too, and there's some summary slides as well. But let me ask the first question. This is from Andrea. Can appraisers provide an estimated value of a high-performing home prior to it being built? Second question, can that same appraiser provide value to the bank after it's been built?
Absolutely. I mean, part of our work that we do is pre-construction consulting. So we're doing a project right now with CEUS construction walls. It's, the concrete poured walls and panels. And, it's a tremendous amount of expense for them to build it. And, they wanted what we call a feasibility analysis, and say, hey, what's going to be the value add for this if we do it this way or we do it that way? Any options they want to run through, we can do different values. Of course, we charge for each of the values. But we can certainly do that. And then after something's been built or installed, we certainly can do a post-installation evaluation. However, we don't even need to do it post. We can actually, if the information is provided to us up front, we can do a current value, and then we can also do what's called a subject to value. So that would, that's basically the way feasibility analysis works anyway. You're comparing things to, the different options that you may put into it.
Great. Betsy, did you want to
say
anything else?
Said it all.
Okay.
You got it.
And then we have a question from Armando. Can you talk about AI's valuation of sustainable buildings, professional development program? What is AI Form 820.06 and who can use it? A couple questions in there. Maybe just start with the AI's valuation of sustainable buildings professional development program.
Well, I highly recommend it if anyone wants to get into that niche of appraising the green buildings. I highly suggest taking 4 courses, Woody. I think it's 4 classes. I took them so long ago now that I can't remember how many. So, but yeah, definitely take them. I highly suggest it. They're very good. They're very thorough. And again, as you get onto if you're a designated member, you get onto the website and you're in part of that list. And I believe Woody and I both, if anyone's looking for someone in those areas, that's the first place I send everybody is go to AI, look up, find an appraiser in your area, and then look and see what they're qualified to do.
I wanted to.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Brett. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, if you want to finish that, but I wanted to get another question in about the green appraisal addendum while we're on the topic. So.
Sure. So, I'm just going to echo Betsy's sentiments. I teach one of the classes, and will soon be teaching all the classes for the AI, and it's 3 classes that are a total of 4 days. The solar is a 2-day thing, and they have an intro class and then a case study class. Very good classes. I've taken McKissick's version of this. I've taken other providers' versions of this. The AI, hands down, is the golden standard for what you're going to do here. And I'll also add, it is the only professional registry that the Appraisal Institute allows non-designated and non-member appraisers to be on. The reason they did that was it was an altruistic reason. It's because so many people are having a hard time finding appraisers that do this kind of work, the AI said, you know what, it's to the consumer's benefit if we put everybody who ever takes these classes, all of the classes completes and put them on a registry, so we can connect people, because there's not enough appraisers doing this around the country. I mean, I've got 9 people in my market alone that are approved and have taken the classes, but not one of them, except for me, is doing anything with it on the actual practical side of it.
So what I wanted to ask, following up on the question, was, we hear a lot about, of course, producing this appraisal addendum. Pearl is producing it on all these homes. The U.S. Green Building Registry for all of our certification projects is automatically producing appraisal addendums. So the great thing is these appraisal addendums are happening everywhere. But I have heard that an appraiser who has not went through that training should not ever use or consider the appraisal addendum. I've also heard the opposite, but could you just speak to that? Because I can imagine a world where we're all in a hurry. That's where we're at these days, right? And we're handing them the appraisal addendum. And then we're like, well, you better go take this big course first before you even consider this in my appraisal. And so what are your thoughts on comments like that? Like, should we just be getting it out there and having people use it, or do they really have to go through all the training? Not that we want them to, but I'm just saying in these circumstances.
I'll jump in on this one, Woody. Here's the thing is it's on the Appraisal Institute website, and it's open to everyone. In fact, right. I encourage my agents to fill it out and put it in there. So no, you do not have to take a class to fill it out. It's pretty self-explanatory when you look at it. It's really just filling in the boxes of, your insulation and your heating systems. And if you do have the solar, then the different arrays that you have. And it's just a piece of information that has everything on 2 sheets. So it's pretty, it's a very informative report, but it's easy to fill out, and you do not need to have any special qualifications to do it. Woody?
If someone hands you that addendum and you're an appraiser, I think you're crazy not to take it and to utilize it. You don't need to take the classes to take information. It's data. That's all that it is. Now, is it data that you're going to understand how to utilize completely? Probably not. But you can always reach out to people like me and Betsy and say, hey, can you run me through this? Or you can go take the classes. I mean, there's definitely options there for folks. But there's by no means is there a threshold there or a gatekeeper saying, hey, you shouldn't do that. It's more information, and it helps you do, when we're doing market analysis, the first step in that is doing what's called a property productivity analysis. We're identifying what the subject property is and what constitutes and what compromises the components of, thank you, my brain's not working today. But you guys know what I'm trying to say. What is the subject property all about? And this is just another way to do it. I am aware, real quickly, I'll make this a real quick point, but I am aware of one appraisal board complaint where an appraiser got sanctioned by the board because they were handed one of these and they didn't even mention it in their appraisal report. I mean, whether they're giving it value or not giving it value or supporting it with value or not, they completely ignored it. And the consumer in that this was in another state, but the consumer in that situation was able to effectively file a valid complaint against the appraiser, and the board found him guilty for it.
Well, and I'm glad you said that. I wanted to follow up on that with another thought of something you said earlier that I feel like I've been saying or seeing some variation of it, where you pointed out, sometimes the issue we run into is that appraisers, again, are not necessarily looking at the green features of a home. And they're, again, saying maybe there are no comps in the area, so they can't look at it. But I'm wondering, and so they're saying there's no comps, so there's no value. And you said that's not true. But is it actually the reverse, as you just mentioned here? Is it that there are no comps, therefore there's more value because we now know this home is high performance, and we don't know all the other homes around our high performance?
So let me touch on that from an academic perspective or concept perspective. So when we're doing a market value appraisal, there's one thing that has to happen. There has to be market acceptance, and it has to be part of the highest and best use of the property. That's fancy appraiser talk to basically say, hey, in order to say there's value for something where you're opining market value, you have to have observations of the market absorbing properties like this. If you happen to be the first thing into the market, there's no such thing as market value as far as real estate valuation goes. What that becomes is a different type of value. It could be value in use or use value, or it can be an investment value. Like someone is just way ahead of the curve. They come to the market, they're an early adopter. They get into something before everybody else does, and then they wait for the market to catch up to where they are. And those generally are going to be people who think for the horizon. They're not looking to get into a property and then turn it right around in 2 years and sell it. But market data is extremely important for that. I mean, the GSEs require us to have some type of data from actual sales that would support it. Like, we can't just use the discounted cash flow analysis. I mean, VA's got specifics on this, and so do all the other GSEs and agencies. They're basically like, hey, you can use that, but it needs to be in a secondary position for support, not direct. And the direct has to be information that we derive from actual sales in the market. But you don't have to actually have something that's directly comparable to the subject. You just have to be able to show that the market somewhere, some way, has been absorbing properties and paying a premium for properties with it. So if I've got a property that's in a competitive niche above where the subject property is, or even below it, if I got both of those situations, I can go, there's no reason not to come to the conclusion that if it adds value here, it's going to add value in here as well. So.
Yeah, well, thank you for elaborating on that. And, I know we're coming to the formal end of the session, but there are more questions. And so we're going to hang out and we're going to keep getting to those questions. But before we do, just a quick reminder for those of you who do need to get going. This session is being recorded, so you can rewatch it at any time. You can share it on social media, post it online, share it with a colleague, you name it. Help us get the word out about it. For those of you watching this in the future, not right now, but on demand, make sure to take a quiz with an 80% passing rate, and you'll receive your certificate. For those of you here live today, you can check your spam in the next couple of days at certs@gutenbergcerts.com and receive your continuing education certificate for attending this session. And as always, before we get into all those questions coming and wrap up, we need to say a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, nearly 300, our executive director, Jose Reyna, and all of our top sponsors, especially our top tier sponsors, Ream and Mitsubishi, who are helping build that value with their products for high performance homes. So Casey, I'll give it back to you to kind of get through some of these questions coming in, but thanks for kind of going down that sideline with me there, everybody.
Sure. And actually, before people jump, I do want to present one slide before we get into some of the others. So if you don't mind, this is the kind of the takeaway that I would like the audience members to know is, think of appraisers like if you're a good builder, if you're a good contractor, if you're a good agent, oftentimes your value is going to be misunderstood or not recognized. Appraisers, just like everybody else, they face competitive pressures, they face commoditization. The value that Woody and that Betsy provide are often not well understood, just like a great contractor who's doing a manual J calculation, or just like a great builder who is building to the highest standards. And so we obviously have challenges in the valuation community. We have appraisers who aren't top of their game, just like we have contractors and builders who aren't the top of their game either. So it really does, to create market transformation, take everybody in the value chain to work together as a team, as Betsy mentioned. And so the appraisers can't do their job if we on the energy efficiency side aren't doing our job, providing them data and being able to, provide that data to them. And so I just want to, my soapbox is there are incredible appraisers out there, and we need to support them and make that value visible. Because oftentimes it's too easy to point fingers at, the appraiser did this, or, the lender did that. And going forward, we actually need to create this virtuous cycle where, as professionals, we're working together as a team. So that's my soapbox, what I wanted people to take away. So in the top of the hour, we can discuss some questions, and I have some other points too. So maybe Brett, maybe go 15 minutes longer or something like that.
Yeah, we can keep hanging out here and answering questions for those of you who want to stay. For those of you who have been with us the whole time, and we're worried about your CEUs, you're approved and you can head out if you have to go. But I hope everyone can stay and let's keep talking. So.
Yep. And you know, one of the things I did want to do is kind of go through some different audience segments and kind of get some opinions from Betsy and Woody. So if I'm a builder listening to this, what's like the one thing that I can do as a builder to help my homes, you know, be properly considered as part of the appraisal process?
I'll go ahead. So from the builder's aspect, you have inventory homes or you have your custom builds. And so as an inventory home, that's something that you're going to be marketing. So make sure that the marketing has the data in it, has the features in it, has the savings in it. And then also make sure that if you have a site agent or if you have an agent that you work with on a normal basis, that they are marketing it that way and that the documentation is there and it goes with the house as well. Make sure that the lender who's bringing an appraiser to value the property also is choosing a competent appraiser who can appraise the value that we've been talking about. And then for the custom builds is, you know, again, it's the data, making sure that the homeowner has the data, that if they're doing a construction loan, make sure that you know, lender has the data and finds a competent appraiser to value it. And then also the biggest thing is making sure that that homeowner keeps that data with them and with the house so that when they refinance in the future or when they go to sell it, that it has all the components that are in that house and, you know, how it was valued at that time so that an appraiser coming in can value it in the future. So.
I've actually worked with some builders and developers here locally that I've had this conversation with them. And one of the first things I tell them is you need to partner with realtors who have a green designation. You need to make sure that they are marketing the property conspicuously. Of course, this is for your production builders that are keeping inventory. But even whether it's production built or it's custom built, I think it's super important to get a high performance certification on your property. I mean, if you're going to go do a HERS or you're going to do whatever. I mean, there's like 120 different organizations out there across the country. It's baffling how many of them there are. But it's important to do it because it quantifies what's in the property and it gives the information. And so if I, like when I'm working on a Pearl certified home, I reach out to Casey directly and say, hey, if they don't give me the information up front or they don't have it, which that's common for homeowners on a refinance to not know where their paperwork is. They'll either reach out to Pearl and get it, or I can call Casey or whoever at Pearl that I know and say, hey, I'm working on this address. Can you get me over? I mean, I've got it within, the same day and I'm able to do what I need to do. Because it is important that you have a third party involved that's actually saying, yeah, the HERS score is actually this. And because, I can show value metrics, a difference in value between, if a property is a 60 HERS score versus a 40 HERS score, 40, of course, is the better. The lower it is, the better it is. We've actually seen premiums for the difference in that. And that's the only certification we have is the HERS score. There's no other third party involved with it. So, but we've actually been able to show that in certain subdivisions.
Yep. So if I am a contractor, so a contractor, whether or not it's a solar contractor, an HVAC contractor, a whole house deep retrofit contractor, is there, you may have already answered this question, Betsy, but just to put a point, what's like the one thing that they can do to help their customers get a fair appraisal down the road?
It's really just having the data. When it comes to, I'm a huge fan of the tankless water heaters, but I know, especially in my market, it's one feature like that, or even like, we saw Ream had, with the heat pump water heaters, all these new features that are out there, or all these new products that are out there. Sometimes it's hard to just value them individually because we don't have the tools yet. We're working on that. We don't have the tools yet to be able to pull these individual features out. But this is something that we can, take into account in the features of the house. And then when we're determining our value is we usually have a range that once we process our adjustments and all that for our sales, that we can maybe it deserves to be up at the higher end of that range because it has all these other features in it. And so it's no different than, if you have the granite or all those other features that you can put into a home to make them, those high-end features. it helps us to explain a value that we're giving to a home based out of our range that we have in the market. So.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I was doing a presentation a couple of years ago for the Charlottesville Association of Realtors, and we had a building science person on the stage that was just beating the appraisers up. And in some cases it's been earned. In other cases it's a little hyperbolic. But they were saying, if you've got a house built in 1930 and you put a geothermal system on it, it's a $25,000 to $50,000 endeavor. But depending on what you're putting in or how large and everything needs to be. But, if that house leaks like a sieve, has no insulation on it, no weatherization, otherwise it's a 1932 home, you're doing something to the property that's called over improving it or making it you have a super adequate feature for that particular property. So that's why the third party certifications are important, because we actually can put something into writing from someone who's trained to do it and say, hey, this is a better home because of this. A system like that in a home that's not set up for it is just it's too much, and it's not going to add any value to the property in most situations. So that's a great point, Betsy. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, what do you make a good point in going back to what you said earlier, where you're able to find actual value based on the different levels of HERS ratings? Mm-hmm. It almost sounds like, because this is what I hear time and time again, I added this feature to my house or this sustainable, how much value do I get? But it really sounds like, based on what you just said and what you're saying now, quite honestly, it shouldn't be up to the appraiser to make a judgment call that there is what we call when you put a higher efficiency HVAC in an older home, we call it making homes waste energy more efficiently, right?
Right.
Is that really up to the appraiser to make that judgment call? And is it really up to the person telling the appraiser to make that judgment call in the reverse? But what you're saying is, it sounds like if you have that third-party energy rating, whether it be HERS or hopefully you get a chance to check out the DOE's home energy score, which is, I would say, in line with that. You just look at that, right? It's a rating. It tells you where the value is.
Sure.
Obviously, it's going to use less energy than a old methane gas furnace. So you'll see it on the rating, but then you're not just judging the feature, you're judging the actual savings. Is it fair to say that that's really the best way to look at it, rather than all these little components here and there?
So, yeah, a home is comprised of many systems, but a home in and of itself is a system. And so when we're valuing real estate, we're valuing the land and the improvements thereon as a whole. Mm-hmm. So, we have to, sometimes it seems almost like we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity, but, we look at it, we get to a point where we're going, okay, this house is either, I won't use the Fannie codes, like C1 and C2, but that makes no sense to most people. But, is this an excellent marketability property versus an average marketability property? And all those things they work together to become the whole. And that's what we're valuing. So in the end, if you've got one feature but no other features, again, it's oftentimes going to be a super adequate feature for that particular property. So yeah, I think that's where that is.
I'd also caution against being too energy efficient centric on these high performing features. High performing features contribute to comfort. They contribute to a number of different things. So focusing just on the cash flow for energy efficiency, like solar. Lots of people buy solar because of the independence it provides to the house, to these other more difficult to quantify benefits, but the appraisers with using their tool set can kind of tease some of that out too. So it's not just about energy.
I think sometimes solar is the sexiest thing because number one, you can see it, and for those that really buy into the philosophy of it, it's a virtual signal as well. I'm green, but if nothing else about the property is working together as a whole to make it a better property. And great point too, Casey. Most of the homes that we're talking about are some of the most comfortable homes you can live in. I mean, you're already in a superlative niche in your market because overall you're likely to have a really nice home if the home overall is energy efficient.
Well, and Casey, you really brought up something that was on my mind, was going to be my next question, because we spent a lot of time here talking about energy ratings, energy saving calculators, solar. But there's something in this world called, non-energy benefits, right? And comfort, you just mentioned comfort. probably very hard to measure, but but what about health? And how does health play a role in appraisers evaluating property? Because clearly at some point there is a financial savings if someone doesn't acquire a health problem, right? I mean, that could be thousands and thousands of dollars of costs if a house causes a health issues. I think about the recent problem we're having, wildfire smoke blowing in. A lot of people think they can hide inside from that. Sadly, we're finding that they can't. The air quality monitoring people are doing in their homes are finding that it's pouring right in and it's bad. Now, what is if appraiser goes in and sees that there's a high performance system with a good MERV filter on it, and it can filter that out, and maybe even people are monitoring the air quality and showing that and documenting that? How can that show up as a non-energy benefit in some way, or what work do we need to be done to make sure that shows up in the value of a home?
Well, again, going back to what I just said, I don't think you're going to have a MERV system like that in a property that's probably not overall in a higher quality category. So again, as a whole, it's probably going to do it because the property is going to come off as something that's, super marketable versus something that's an average marketability. Betsy, what do you think?
No, I would agree with that. So we've talked about over the years with different clients how they point out they have the HEPA filters on their HVAC systems and things like that. And again, that's something that like the tankless water heater, it's not something that we can give a direct value to, but it's something that we can help support. Say, they've done these improvements to the property. It is a healthier lifestyle. Not something we can necessarily quantify at the time, but it does help us, be able to bring it into a value where we, think it should be in that range that we have. So.
Yeah, would it be fair to say, hypothetically, if every single indoor air plus home were marked as such in the MLS and on the AI addendum, you might actually have the data to quantify at least an IAP labeled home versus non, and the data would be whatever the data is. It might indicate a premium as well.
I mean, I think, and this is just, me looking into my crystal ball again, but I think we're going to start seeing agents and housing professionals that are marketing property getting more into scanning stuff. Meaning that every appliance that we buy now has a QR code on it or a SKU code, and you're going to start seeing this stuff populating over into MLSs as that evolves. It's already happening in the appraiser side. There are definitely inspection programs out there where I can go through, I can scan the QRs on every mechanical system in the home, and I'm sure Pearl and other companies like that are looking at that for doing their certification reports too. So it's really going to become down. We're going to end up with people involved that basically just collect data on houses, and they provide them for appraisers, they provide them for real estate agents. So, that picking that up quantitatively is going to be so much easier to do as we move into that era of technology.
Casey, as we're wrapping up here, or does anyone want to give any kind of just final thoughts as we close out?
I can go on and on about this, but there's a time limit. My concluding statement is this is a conversation that needs to continue happening.
Hey Casey,
multiple forums.
Real quick, we missed a very important thing that we shouldn't have. So for those of you that are involved, in Chad Owens, thanks for asking your question because it just prompted my memory to work. You can put language in contracts that require the mortgage company to hire appraisers that are certified to do this type of work, that have the word that we use for it in the appraisal profession is called competency. And excuse me. So the National Association of Home Builders does provide model language. Of course, any agents that you're working with or any agents that are on this call, talk to your brokers about doing this stuff because ultimately they make the decisions. But you absolutely can somewhat steer the transaction if you're putting this type of language in there. A lot of our agents here in Charlottesville are using some version of what the National Association of Home Builders have put out.
I also just in the chat, I sent him the link for the find an appraiser on the registry. So you can also go there too. And if the lender's willing to take suggestions for appraisers who are qualified, you can give them that list.
Sorry,
And
Casey, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, not at all. And Brett, I noticed like Pamela from Elevate posted some resources here too. Are the resources in the chat going to be available? Because I know Pamela's done amazing work at Elevate as well.
Yeah, we've had Pam and Elevate on, and hopefully we'll have you back on, Pam. Thanks for joining us,
Brett,
to talk about all the great tools you're doing. So yeah, we'll have all that
Brett,
available. Yeah.
She almost beat me up one night for that. Don't call her Pam. Her name's Pamela.
Pamela, sorry. Yeah. Yep. So we'll have all that, but I guess as we wrap up, Casey, where can people go to learn more about this if they want to dive into it and start out? So
yeah, certainly. Well, in the slides, our contact information is there for Woody, for Betsy, for myself. You can go, of course, to our website, pearlcertification.com, or just help@pearlcertification.com. If you're an agent, there's a special spot for you there, because we have a network and provide education and resources for agents. Same thing for builders and contractors. If you're an appraiser, you can certainly reach out to me or Woody and Betsy, because we do want to engage and educate appraisers more and help them succeed in their businesses.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Casey, I really appreciate your time and Pearl Certification putting this all together. And Betsy, Woody, good to meet you all. Thanks for doing the great work out there and joining us. Everyone else, have a great rest of your week. Take care, and we will catch you on our session here next week. So thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everyone.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.